If you ever wondered, are there any superheroes who hate Tony Stark, aka Iron Man? Well, I have the answer for you. It's a lot! But for now, I'm Adam Andrews, this is Top 10 Nerd, and here's 10 of them. Before we start though, I got a fun little question for you. How do you think a real-life Tony Stark would be handled by the people of the Earth in this real world? Kicking off the list though, at number 10 is Luke Cage. For a street-level hero who came from those same streets, Luke Cage has come a long way. And while he works with almost every superhero out there, he cannot see eye to eye with at least one. That's Iron Man. It's honestly a very simple explanation. Like I said, Luke Cage came from the streets, and he looks out for those streets and the people that live on them. Tony Stark, on the other hand, came from wealth. He was an arms dealer. He never looked out for the little guys, not on the small scale at least. When he moved to heroism, his eyes were always set on the bigger picture, and it's one of his biggest character flaws. When Tony focuses on the bigger picture, he puts everyone else to the wayside and has continuously made bad decisions based on what he thinks is right, when in actuality, it puts a lot of people in worse positions. While almost everyone on this list is affected by this, it's basically the opposite of what Luke Cage stands for, and therefore, these two, they don't really see eye to eye. Number 9. Spider-Man. Thanks to the MCU, Robert Downey Jr. and Tom Holland, most people believe that Spider-Man and Tony Stark are as thick as thieves. And they are! In the MCU, there was a time where comic book Tony Stark and Peter Parker got along. In the beginning of the comic book Civil War event, Peter was all for Tony's Superhuman Registration Act, and this was partially because of the way that Peter admired Tony Stark. But Iron Man was totally using this admiration to his own advantage. He used Peter's naivety to convince Spider-Man to unmask himself to the world, which caused untold amounts of problems for the hero, not only in that story but even outside of it, and it even sort of indirectly led to the split between Peter and Mary Jane Watson. Not only that, but once Peter saw the flaws in Tony's ways during Civil War, he switched sides, and that seemingly led Iron Man to have a personal vendetta against Spider-Man, with Tony using knowledge of Peter's personal life in order to attack him. While time has passed since then, I think the stings of those actions still left an impression on Parker. Also, Tony totally insulted Peter when he was head of Parker Industries. You'd think an industrialist like Tony would be more supportive. But nay, he was not. Number 8. Namor the Submariner. Sure, Tony Stark is massively intelligent, but he's also a massive jerk with an ego that could fill a mansion. You take that ego and you put it eye to eye with an ego that could fill an Olympic-sized pool, like Namor the Submariner's ego, for example, and that's just a breeding ground for conflict. Nothing is more fragile than a dude with a massive ego. These two have egos out the wing-wang, which when paired up has caused them to come to blows on multiple occasions, even when they were on the same team like the Illuminati, although that team wasn't exactly flawless, ever. But it's not all ego. Namor is a king before he is anything else, and he will always look out for the best interests of his people, at least according to him. Iron Man has made quite a few rash decisions for immediate results that put everyone else at risk, including the Atlanteans, and even before his time as a superhero, Tony Stark's other job as an industrialist has caused pollution of the oceans, which is something Namor really is not a fan of. Number 7. Thor. If we are speaking of Iron Man's bad decisions, Civil War is like the biggest example. To be fair, the Superhuman Registration Act actually seems like a good idea in theory, given the amount of destruction that the superpowered community causes. But then again, when Tony couldn't get into contact with Thor to make him join his side, he instead decided to use the Asgardians' genetic information to create an out-of-control robot clone of Thor called Ragnarok that used its almost godly power to usher superheroes to the afterlife. As you can imagine, when Thor eventually came back, he was not exactly pleased. Not only that, but the victorious Iron Man tried to tell the extremely powerful god what was what and how he should act, and Thor responded by making sure that Iron Man understood the error of his ways. Number 6. Hawkeye. Not all heroes start off as heroes. Hawkeye certainly did not, as he was originally an Iron Man villain. Hawkeye worked as a circus act performing at Coney Island, where his marksmanship failed to impress the crowds compared to Iron Man's heroics. Deciding to prove his own worth as an archer, Hawkeye designed several trick arrows and a costume that he donned with the intention of becoming an adventurer. He eventually became caught in Black Widow's scheme to defeat Iron Man, introducing both her and Hawkeye as villains for the first time. But while Black Widow seemingly dropped her disdain for Tony Stark, Hawkeye did not. even though he beat Iron Man twice in his first appearance. I think it may just be residual feelings from that first encounter, but Hawkeye has never been able to really look past Tony's flaws. The interesting thing, at least for me, is that I kind of feel as though they share a lot of the same flaws. So I guess that makes people butt heads. Number 5. Captain America. Of course we have to talk about Captain America. Marvel's Civil War event was one of its biggest and most well known. Not to mention how a good chunk of characters on this list feel the way they do because of that event. At the core of it all though was Iron Man and Captain America and their opposing views on superhero registration and the rights of those with abilities. Steve Rogers felt that heroes needed to be above direct government control because when politicians could control the heroes, they could decide who the villains were. Freedom over control. Iron Man, on the other hand, felt that it was reasonable that heroes have proper training and oversight, that the casual self-policing the superhero community had enjoyed until now was insufficient, and that it was now impossible to resist this change in the political landscape. These ideals are echoed in the natures of both Steve Rogers and Tony Stark, causing them to be opposed in so many different minute ways. To say they hate each other is not very accurate, but they have differences of opinion that lead them into conflict. But at their cores, they still respect one another and genuinely do want a better future for the world. They just go about it in very different ways. Number 4. The Incredible Hulk. A catalyst for the Civil War event were the multiple instances where superpowered beings have caused such massive destruction, whether it was on purpose or not. While Bruce Banner as the Hulk has never meant harm on any innocents, he is unfortunately one of the main points of conversation when discussing the damage superheroes can do. Just prior to Civil War, one Hulk rampage in Las Vegas robbed away the living status of 28 people and a dog. While this was one of many different events that led to the Superhuman Registration Act, this one was different because, unknown to the general public, the Illuminati, which Iron Man is a prominent member of, decided to deal with the issue of the Hulk by loading him into a rocket and blasting him off into space. Hulk basically made a home out there in space, and then just like that, it was taken from him thanks to a self-destruct on that very same rocket. The Illuminati banished the Hulk from the Earth and then took away the new home that he created. As you can imagine, Hulk came back with a vengeance in World War Hulk, and pretty much no one could stop him. Number 3. The Mutants. I don't think Tony Stark hates mutants, but I sure do think that he doesn't give a damn about them. Iron Man attempted to recruit the X-Men during Civil War, and Emma Frost rightly pointed out that the Avengers did nothing when Genosha was attacked by Sentinels. 16 million mutants passed away, and the other heroes, Iron Man included, were almost nowhere to be found. But the bigger elephant in the room is the fact that what Tony is even supporting in his Civil War is the Superhuman Registration Act, which itself was just an evolution of the Mutant Registration Act that purposefully segregated mutants for being who they were born to be. Tony didn't really care about that. He cared about having powerful pawns on his side. He would rather have them on his side since they are useful to keep around, but he doesn't actually care about their struggle, and he doesn't even fully trust mutants. Also, during Avengers vs. X-Men, Tony Stark was the one that tried to destroy the Phoenix Force, which split it into 5 pieces and gave 5 mutants the power of the Phoenix, and that caused way more problems than if he just did nothing at all, like he probably should have. Number 2. Captain Marvel. We've gone on and on about Marvel's Civil War, but we haven't even mentioned the second one. That's mainly because it sucked, but it still happened. While Tony Stark still remained a key figure, it was a different captain this time around that opposed him. After the discovery of an inhuman precog named Ulysses Kane, Captain Marvel wanted Ulysses to work with the Ultimates in order to preemptively tackle disasters before they even happen. But Iron Man opposed the idea, suggesting it was dangerous to take Ulysses' visions as fact, as it was possible to prevent the events that Ulysses saw, meaning his visions were not set in stone. Also, Tony brought into question the morality of stopping and punishing somebody for a disaster they could potentially do and might not even know that they would do it, if that makes sense. While technically I think Tony was actually right here, it still split the superhero community and led to a conflict, but these two have actually been butting heads and coming to blows for a long time. It's almost safe to say that they never have actually really been friends at all. And finally, in at number 1, Stingray. Stingray. Who the heck is Stingray? Yeah, I asked the same question. Tony Stark is kind of a huge jerk sometimes. You may have gathered that from watching this list. He just kind of does things without thinking it through. He's more of a shoot first, ask questions later kind of guy, and well, that kind of thinking gets you into trouble sometimes. Back in the day, there was a little Iron Man centric story arc called Armor Wars, which kicked off when it was revealed that the villain Spy Master had stolen some Iron Man armor and then had sold those secrets to Justin Hammer, who then sold them to criminals and heroes alike. Armed with his usual arsenal and a list of people who had his secrets, Tony went off and tried to recover his tech. On his list of various heroes and villains was a hero called Stingray, aka probably one of the nicest people in Marvel Comics. He was basically house sitting on the West Coast Avengers island base when Iron Man showed up demanding that Stingray hand over his suit. When Stingray refuses and tries to run away from Iron Man ain't playing any games, and he basically traps Stingray with an avalanche and then renders him unconscious with an electric trap, just to find out that Stingray has no Stark tech in his suit at all. That's what happened. What a jerk. And there you go, 10 superheroes who really don't like Iron Man. Got any more suggestions or thoughts on my picks? Well, let me know down in the comments below. But until then, I'm Adam Andrews. I will catch you all on the flippy flop. Peace out, nerds, and flip flip.